and it'd be with you soon.
Okay, okay, nice.
It was
So,
a tease. It was a big thing to think through.
okay, okay, I'm glad. So, hi, Belinda, nice to meet you, and hi, David.
Hi, Guillem. Nice to meet you.
Really excited to be here.
So yeah, the team expanded, Belinda, after the last session, and thinking about what kind of skill set we need, and know we need a holochain architect as well. Then I think I forwarded Guillem the video, watched it, and he's like, "This is exactly what I've been thinking and dreaming about for the last 2 years." So here we are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So does that mean I don't need to bring Guillem up to speed on the first low-code conversation that we had?
I don't believe so.
He has
I have seen
some
that.
understanding of.
I've watched that. Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So we can go straight into it.
Right.
All right, Stephen, I'll mute and I'll let the geniuses get on with it.
So, Guillem, I'm going to give you just this much context, yeah? We started with this problem, which is that I don't know how to code or design an application architecture, and that's not just me, yeah? And then I knew that I needed to find an example of a project that I'd love to do, but that I don't know how to build or even begin, yeah, to think about. And we talked about, you know, in very general terms, my interest in, Stephen's and my interest in the fact that people find it hard to organize themselves to do things that are meaningful to them and therefore valuable to them. Yeah. And so in the last couple of days, I was thinking about, okay, well, what kind of scenario are we going to come up with to talk about today? And I noticed a few things. The head of the World Food Programme came out and said that they're doubling their estimate of the number of people worldwide who are on the brink of starvation, from 135 million people to 270 million people. So a lot of those are in areas where there's major conflict, like Yemen, you know, various other parts of the Middle East, for example, parts of Africa. But not all of them are, because a non-profit called Feeding America, which distributes food to needy people in the US, is saying that 1 in 4 American children could be going hungry by the end of this year. So that's like in 3 weeks' time. And this is, I think, related to some research that came out this week that said, in a recent survey, 82% of Americans said that they've been hit so hard by COVID and the impact on the economy that they can't afford a $500 emergency. So I started thinking about, how could we help people feed themselves and each other? So there's some issue there, obviously, around food supply and the affordability of food, but there are also some issues around the quality of food that people are eating and the people's access to healthy, fresh food and the affordability of that. So here's my idea. Focusing on urban areas, because that's probably where people are most in need most immediately. Help people to get together to create urban food gardens and track contributions from people. So contributions could be materials like pieces of land and seeds, for example, could also be labour, so people's effort, and monitor outcomes. So outcomes could include yields, so the food that gets produced from food gardens. One of the ways of monitoring that could be that people could take photographs of, you know, what the land looked like before and what it looked like afterwards. And the land could be a vacant lot, it could be somebody's front yard, it could be the footpath, right? Like or the strip in the middle of the road even that is just has grass on it, right? So we're monitoring outcomes. We're also monitoring value. And in this case, if we're talking about food, value could include things like the value in terms of my finances. So how did it help me afford food and afford other things because I maybe didn't have to pay so much for food. But also what is the impact on my health? And then if we're creating a bunch of data, what is the impact on the health of a group of people or a population? So it might be a suburb, you know, or a bigger group. And then when we're generating data, there's some interesting things that we can start to do. So there's all kinds of initiatives around, right, that are about crowdsourced science, and lots of people are doing lots of things around getting, you know, enthusiastic young people, for example, to take photographs of evidence of biodiversity or changes in biodiversity over time. Often when you're looking at the crowdsourced data stuff, there's somebody in the middle who wants to harvest all of that data and often generate quite a significant profit from it and not distribute that profit back to the people who helped to create the data resource. So let's do something different and say that everybody owns their data, and as they participate in this food economy, they get allocated some kind of rewards. We could call them carrots, right? Or carrot credit. We could allow them to swap and trade and even sell their credits in the system. So like if I contribute 10 hours of my time to this other garden, then maybe I can have somebody come and give me 10 hours to help me with my front yard. But I own the data that I contribute to the system, and I can swap and trade and sell my data as well. So I have two challenges for you. One, how the hell do we go about designing a system like that? How do we start designing something like that? And two, how can we identify a core set or subset of the requirements? So some of the requirements are going to be specific to this problem and solution around food, right? But some of the requirements are going to be core and generic enough. What I want to do is create like an engine for helping people to organize and work on problems together. And how do we identify a core set of requirements that we can then reuse across multiple different scenarios where people are organizing groups of people to work on a problem together and rewarding each other for their collective effort.
Well, that's going to take like 12 minutes, and I think we're not. Just joking. Like that's big. Yeah, lots of things there. I'm happy because I see a lot of connections to different projects that are emerging in the Holocene community as well. So I think in some directions we are very aligned and could collaborate a lot. And holochain's architecture at the technical level encourages that a lot. So I'm happy about that. Okay, so I don't know exactly how to start. Do you want me to do a little bit of how do we design something like this? Yeah, let's see. Okay, so there are clearly two parts, which is one, the currency design, and I'm using the currency design because I've done the currency design workshop. So let give a bit of context. There is this Commons Engine organization, sister of Holochain, which does currency design and currency in the sense of tracking value and tracking flows. And I think this is pretty much what you are talking about at different levels and with different things. Me, myself, I'm just getting introduced to that, so I won't be as much of help there. Okay, should we use mutual credit? Should we track hours? Should we track contributions equally? Whatever. Like I know very little. I can tell you what I think, but you are going to be better trusting other people, I guess. And then there's the technical aspect, and in the technical aspect, I think I can be of use. So I think from the technical point of view, the most important thing is that the holochain fits really well on that vision. Like really well. I don't know any technology that's better for it. In the sense that in holochain, what you have is that you can create private decentralized networks. And I don't know about any other technology that can do that efficiently and in the interesting ways that holochain can. And what holochain encourages, because yeah, just for the nature of it, is it encourages you to create an application as a template. Okay, the application is a DNA. I don't know if I don't want to go too deep into the weeds, but just know that the application code is a DNA. So what you're encouraged to do is create a template DNA, and then you attach some properties to it, and you get your private network. And let me translate that a little bit. So imagine that we create an application that has some grassroots initiatives module that, I don't know, it's pulling people to see who wants to do a urban garden. And then something to track the hours and then whatever, right? So 4 or 5 modules. And we combine them together in a DNA. In that DNA, you can say, okay, this is this network, or so all these modules for this neighborhood or for this location, okay? And that puts up a whole network only on that location. It's not an open wide network, but it's more, hey, here is the version of this DNA of us, right? So think of it, okay, let's use the metaphor of a game because it's worked for me well in the past. So yeah, soccer is very popular here. It's the game that I grew up playing. So imagine the game of soccer, right? So you create the blueprint of soccer, which is the DNA, validation rules, all what you can do in soccer. You can kick the ball, you cannot touch the ball. Okay, what you can do, what you cannot. You create that. And then how many instances of the game can be played? Well, anyone can take the game and play it, right? So in holochain, that's exactly the same. So you create the template code, and then anyone can instantiate it as many times as they want, and in different contexts as well. So we could be talking about neighborhood networks of these things. So each neighborhood has its own value tracking, its own needs meeting and data production. So that's one side of it, and yeah, and that just built in the technology basically. Yeah, okay, I'm going to stop there. I don't want to talk too much. Any feedback, any questions? Do you want me to get more technical even, or is it okay if we stay at this level?
This level is fine. So if I heard you correctly, we would create a blueprint for the group, for a group, yeah, and define a set of rules for the game that people are playing, and so how do we handle, because there are probably some rules that we want to set so that they're consistent across every group, and probably some rules that we want to let people have discretion with. How do we handle that?
Right, yeah, perfect. So, depending on the exact rules, like there are some rules that you can be more flexible about, there are some rules that you can't. Depending, what you can even do is say, okay, let's split the game into different games, and then let the communities install whatever games they want. So instead of having only one blueprint, you can say, okay, let's have the blueprint for a time banking, let's have a blueprint for initiative, let's have whatever. And then on the part of the initiatives, you can say, okay, I want to install the time banking and the initiatives, you know, and you end up with the contextual valid things.
Yeah.
I think that's the most elegant solution for as many cases as possible. That's cool. There are some cases, and this is very technical and very security related, in that it's much better to have the information in one single game. As in, the difficulty of splitting into games is that things here are difficult to be affecting this game here, because they are independent things. They can talk to each other, but it's difficult that these rules affect these rules. So in that case, somehow we need to take different modules, smash them together, connect them well so that the security is guaranteed, and then that's a new template of a new game. And that bit, like, actually these days I was thinking a lot about this, because you guys got really excited, got me really excited about this. So I was like, okay, that's the most difficult pain point, in which you have to maintain security at the game level and you cannot split it into games. That's going to be the hard bit. And I would suggest that maybe that's more further down the road than the first part, which is quite powerful by itself, and it's much less risky. It can give a lot of possibilities as well. Yeah, yeah.
Belinda, may I just, Guillem, when we spoke about this particular issue, we were looking at the membrane, which would have the universal rules, so FAA. Okay, so those are the universal rules of football game. And each individual so people have to agree that they agree to those universal things before they can come in. And if they violate those, and then there's provision for them to have to leave if they won't play. But we also spoke about the idea of localized, where people could play variations of that, where they could add their own little variations within those as a syndicate, for example, or peer-to-peer. So long as the variations did not violate the universal rules. Am I correct in thinking that's possible?
Yeah, that's possible, but in a couple different ways. You can go about it in a couple different ways. Okay. So first of all, you have the blueprint of your game, and you can basically attach some properties to it before starting it. So let's have it concrete. I don't know, some membrane stuff, right? So I developed a module called social triangulation, like maybe 6 months ago. What's interesting about this module is that it allows so that only people vouched for can enter the network. So inside the network, we are 100 people. If 3 people of those invite someone, they can come in. Otherwise, they can't. So, okay, here you have one part of the game. Okay, so I'm vouching you, you can enter, basically. What you can configure before starting the game is the number of vouchers that someone needs to enter. Instead of 3, you can say 5. Okay, but it's still the same game. It just has some parameters that you can set before starting. That's how you can achieve variation. If the variation is greater than that, it's not just some properties or some parameters, but it's changing the mechanisms itself, then you have to create a new different template. And 2 people can come in and they can start to play their own game by themselves, no problem. But that does add some friction if they are not developers in order to boot up the game, if they have to change the rules and the mechanisms. We can try to make the mechanisms as generic as possible, but I don't think that's a good route. I like more create different mechanisms and let people choose. But someone has to create the mechanisms first. That's right. I don't know if I answer your question.
Yes, you did. Thank you. Because it was within the context of trying to create the same capacity that blockchain has with a smart contract, where you're still playing within the rules. So let's say it's standard football rules on the membrane, but there's some people there who are under 12, so they have to play the rules, but to a slightly different variation. And the idea would be they would agree that to any variations of that, or that I could make up an agreement unique to me and Belinda, or I could make a rule set unique to you 3 and myself. The 4 of us agree and they're subsets. So you've got hierarchical rules where you can't do things, but it means that we can have a game ourselves, the 4 of us, and play by variation. So and now in blockchain, that's effectively what a smart contract allows you to do. It allows you to formulate the preconditions for what happens, but it's still within the same block. So what I'm interested in is, because literally in the world we're looking at the ability where people can enter into agreements with each other within this safe environment. So the agreement recognizes the overarching rules, but allows people to enter into agreements. For example, if you give me some cow manure, then I agree that I'll give you some 5 vegetables. you know, and that's an agreement, and that's recorded as an agreement. So, and I can say, and I want someone else to witness that agreement, like it used to be before laws became laws in villages, in community. So in the case of England, Anglo-Saxon time, where most modern laws and most modern agreements were born, but they actually came about through verbal. That's why witnessing was important. So that's what we're thinking of being able to do. Number one is as part of this. So am I may be completely getting it wrong.
No. I like what you said. Can be perfectly adapted. I think only one caveat is that games in Holochain are not hierarchical, so you cannot forbid or disallow or force anyone from playing or not playing a game. That's their choice. What you can do is create a game in which one of the rules is two people can make variations when they interact peer-to-peer, whatever they want. But that's a game, you know? So a game can be as permissive or as little permissive or as much permissive. That's the wrong word, I guess, but as they want. So you can create a game in which you say the players can say anything. I don't care that much. But in your case, you probably want to say, okay, the players can say anything or can create agreements as long as the two players agree to it, so they sign, and that's what you would put in the code. The two players sign. But then whatever is in the agreement, the application doesn't really know, you know? You can do things like that, absolutely no problem. What you cannot do is create a new template and only, okay, let's see. Yeah, from one game you cannot control another game, but you can create a game, an overarching game in which different interactions can occur. That's for sure.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Absolutely. And then another point there was that I don't know if you know about value flows and REA, but if like lots of what you're talking about, I think could be covered by that, by REA.
I'm not sure about that. I've been watching REA and Pop. I've had many discussions with Popsy and others, and he's had a look at some of my value stuff, and I've watched some of the discussions going on in terms of from the programmers on looking at some of the concepts that they've got with value flows. The main difference between the value that we're looking at is that so we can they tend to talk about value in the plural in the sense of people's values, or they're talking about benefit. So it's not an exacting measure. What my methodology does is we'll take a benefit and put a value measurement, verifiable measurement of its value impact upon people or things. So it becomes then, it's a perfect instrument then for creating a currency, even a tokenized currency of something like kindness, because I measure the value impact of kindness upon a system or a people. So it's slightly different, but I've had a look at REA and it doesn't quite do that. The other problem is if you use REA in the way that Popsy is talking about in some countries, it's illegal because it breaks privacy legislation. All right. So we went to a community or two communities in this country who were looking would adopt, if you like, some sort of commons engine. But when they said, well, actually, if you were to expose my bank details, you'd go to jail. And Sam's view of that, well, fuck them. Go to jail, which didn't go down well in the community. So I'd have to have a closer look at that to see whether, and that's what I mean by one of the rules on that we would be looking at is that you've got to create a safe place.
Yeah.
Where you're not violating the sovereign rules that you live in or that your transactions are consummated under. And so I asked Sam whether he'd hard-coded some of those rules or whether whether people could choose, for example, for them to be anonymous or their transactions or their bank accounts to be anonymous or not seen under some circumstances. So I'd have a look at that, but I think it's been around a long time. So, but I haven't. Is there anywhere updated documentation on it that I could read it?
Well, there is, depending. Yeah, I'll send it your way, and
thank you.
You can
I'll
have
read
a
it.
look at it. Yeah.
Yeah, but if not, it's something like that. And I think to begin with, we can do something much simpler in terms of for the needs of what's required. But I think the bit that Belinda will be very interested in terms of the low code is that if we could get to the point where people who understand what their local game should look like, rather than me as a developer, so they can actually create their own game within, by, if you like, configuring a template of component parts which are already made that will work. I think that might go a long way. Belinda, am I thinking along the right lines there?
Yeah. Yes. And so I guess my question is, at this point, is how do I start? Like, Guillem, if I'm preparing for a conversation with somebody like you, yeah, what kind of documentation is useful for me to prepare? What kinds of, I'm guessing there's a bunch of lists that I need to compile or something like that, right? That's possibly the starting point. What are those? What's the minimum that we need to start?
Yeah. So, okay, here we find ourselves quite differently. Like, this is not the normal situation that the user of the low-code environment is going to be in, because that user will already have a lot of things developed for them. So as in the sense that right now, you don't have the template of the game. If you had the template of the game, you just can configure it and put it up. But we now have to create the template first. So that's like, don't take this as what the low-code users are going to have to do. Yeah, okay, let's go there, and then I'm going to unpack some other things that piqued my interest. So the most important thing is which things are you going to track in the system, and that will derive in the user stories. And user stories, I don't know if you've done user stories in the past, but something like, as a participant in the community, I should be able to do an agreement with another participant, and that's valid in these cases, is enough. Mm-hmm. And that's basically for any kind of system, not only Holochain. Holochain specific, the membrane is really important. So who is allowed to participate in the game and under what conditions is really important, because that will determine, is this a global open network that is played around the world, or is this a neighborhood to neighborhood thing, or is it at the national level or whatever? So that's really, really important. And like, then the first thing I would do as a developer or designer or architect is actually look at what projects and modules are already there that we can use. And I think that right now, like there has been a new version of Holochain and things are lagging a bit behind, but we'll have quite a lot already there of what you're saying. Like I'm participating in a group that's doing something like grassroots initiatives, and what like people committing things that they have fits perfectly there. Monitoring of outcomes, like, yeah, I don't know if you want to do time banking or what kind of currency people would be trading, but that's going, I'm participating in a project with mutual credit, and that would be more or less covered by that, like with some configuration. It's all the same generic tools, and then you configure them and instantiate them. Okay, so that's one thing. Anything else there, Belinda? Does that answer your question? Yeah.
So user stories and membrane conditions is a good place to start. Yeah.
Really good place. Yeah.
Anything else on the list of kind of, you know, good place to start, or would that be enough to then get us to another conversation?
That would be enough. In my experience, it's always really good to have a good context of what the target users are, at least the first test community or whatever, or like there is this feedback process that happens when you design, implement, and then evaluate, and then go on. And it's really important to have clear what are we targeting, because lots of the times, like this is one thing that I found myself in a lot of times, that I stay a lot in the generic, and this can be used for everyone and so on. And this at extreme doesn't really work. Like at some point you have to go down to the concrete, right? And having like real interaction with someone that will use at the end the thing is really valuable.
Yeah.
But that's not a technical thing. That's more of a, I don't know, agile. I don't know.
Sure. Okay.
All right. Well, guys, I think is this a good place to leave it and pick it up again in a couple of weeks?
I've left a couple of things in my just can I do like 3 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
I just and after the 3 minutes, we just want to make sure Belinda summarizes. She knows what to do next. So we've confirmed that, and then we can go, and then we can come back in a couple of weeks and go for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because Stephen said a couple of things, and I'm like, everything until now, Holochain is really good. That I don't know. So it's about privacy. Sorry, not privacy, anonymity, and it's basically anonymity on Holochain. I don't know exactly what your requirements are on that, but Holochain is not at all geared towards anonymity. because in a holochain network, everything is signed and you know where everything is coming from. So there is an abstract piece of data in holochain. It always comes with, okay, this person did it, right? And this makes it very difficult to do anonymity. You can do things like, okay, I'm going to create my own little game that only I can participate in. So I'm playing a game with myself, so no one can come in, so no one can see whatever moves I'm doing. Yes, you can do that. But you have to find a way to get that data out without revealing who you are. And that's going to be difficult because if you're the one that has the data and has to get it out, the other agents can see who you are, right? So,
sorry, I'm not. Anonymity is not a requirement. It's just
okay.
I mentioned it because some people use anonymity as a way of compliance with privacy law. It's a clumsy way of doing it.
Okay.
So what we're saying is we need to be one of the membrane rules to enter is that you're not going to break a law. You're not going to murder somebody, or you're not going to cause a crime, or do something which gets other people into trouble or do harm, things like that. So privacy is like in Europe, a regulatory requirement, and there's many ways of actually meeting the specifications of and obligations of privacy. And anonymity is a very blunt instrument for doing that. But if you're yeah, it's not a requirement. What's a requirement is having the ability to meet legislative requirements when you're trading, for example.
Right. Okay. Sorry then.
That was me. I apologize.
No.
I didn't make myself clear.
That's okay. And then this other piece, which I don't know exactly how it impacts, but since we are short on time. So in a game, everything that anyone commits and publishes, everyone can see, but not people from outside the game. Okay, so we are playing this game, I'm doing this move, and you can say you can set it private, but most of the time you are publishing and everyone can see what your moves were, right? If you want to maintain privacy, you may be wanting to create a new game with different configurations and say, no, we are playing our private, only people invited can enter. Things like that. So this is a very natural move as well in holochain. Okay, David, I'm done. Thanks.
Amazing. All right. So, Belinda, do you want to just confirm what your next steps are?
Okay. So broadly, my next task is to define the game. Yeah, and I have three pieces in there. One is what I'm calling user definitions. So that includes the context and objectives for an individual who's playing the game and the context and objectives for a group. Yeah. And then there's the membrane, who can participate and under what conditions. And then there's user stories. So what are we going to track? What are people able to do inside of the game? Have I got that right, Guillem?
Amazing. Yeah.
Okay, super. And do you need any templates or formats, or is that those parameters enough for you? Do you need any more guardrails?
I don't have templates for those things, so I'm happy to make it up if there is any format in which it would be helpful to get that information. Please let me know.
Like the only thing I would say that there is that there is a kind of grammar for user stories, which I can send you examples of, but at this level, it doesn't really matter. So right now we are just defining requirements, and it's not like this is going to be translated at a technical level in any way. So whatever feels more comfortable for you.
Okay, so it's based on our paradigm of games.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, that's the guardrails.
And just on the one final thing for me, I'm interested in. Well, one question is there's the Commons engine, and then there's the REA. When I last spoke at it, I wasn't sure whether the two had joined together or whether REA is a separate thing to Commons Engine. Do you know where the status is on that?
Yeah. So, and David, I don't know if you know about more about this than me, but Commons Engine is not really a project like a holochain technical project. It's more of a hub of people that are interested in currency design and new commons initiatives and so on. And they did, for example, a workshop. So they are teaching people to do currency design and things like that. And they have like derived projects like Just One Organics, which I encourage you to look into. Yep. And then REA is an actual technical project that implements a language.
I'll look at both because I'm familiar with Commons Engine, so thank you very much, and I'll see where REA is going. Then I'll be able to see whether that's something that we can pull and use. Certainly, Commons Engine, there's a great wealth there which we're aligned with, so I'll look at that and then I can feed back to Belinda.
I think just for the social, there's been some flows. So Commons Engine, which was Fernanda, Jean, and Emmeline, I believe now is more focused with Fernanda, Moritz, and Art on pure currency design. And Jean is working with Pospy and others on something built around REA. So I think that's also, there's definitely some movement between them, but I think it's people movement rather than project movement. And I'm not sure exactly what or what they're working on around REA is to be revealed rather than or something like that. So
all right. Okay. And Nipi, I'll ask Popsy. I saw him the other day. He's living down in the permaculture centre here, so I'll go and bend his ear.
And just this last piece of David reminded me that I should say that yes, there are quite a lot of people in the community that have more or less the same dream about low-code environments and doing your own game and things like that. So, and we are meeting regularly with those people, and I think that you're going to see cool experiments and projects coming out of that. I can send you links of what is already out there.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Amazing. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you guys. This has been fun.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Before Christmas works for everyone.
Yep.
Yeah.
It'll be the 22nd.
The same day of the week.
The same day of the week. Cool. Okay. Phenomenal. Take care.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Bye.